Welcome to Connect the Plots with Cylia Erik, a podcast about the stories that connect us.
3, 2, 1, and we're live. I'm Eric Grove, and I'm a writer. This is my friend Cylia, and she is a reader. Today we are plotting after our conversation with Wendy N. Wagner.
So, as is usual with our plotting episodes, and I don't know why I'm saying as is usual, this is our second plotting episode, but here we are. If you didn't notice in the last one, we've created a structure for it, and that's show talk, episode talk, and what's now in next talk. So first, I want to talk about the show.
Okay.
We recorded our initial interviews before we started uploading because that is causal and linear space-time continuum. You have to record them before you have some content to upload. And what I've noticed is we said, and specifically I said, there were things that were going to be in the show notes that were not in the actual episode show notes.
And I can take a small amount of responsibility for that, which is that Syl shared those show notes with me, but for technical and logistical reasons, they are not, in fact, in the show notes per se, but...
Well, you pointed out there is a character limit, apparently.
Correct, yeah.
And so...
There is a... So there is a 4,000 character limit for the show notes that we can append when we're uploading to Apple Podcasts and other platforms. I think mimic Apple in that same way. How many words do you think our show notes were for the book list when we talked to Elizabeth Bear for our first episode?
I did go and check this after you brought this up. And before you get any of our colored commentary or personal website links or anything else, I believe my recollection is 3,965 words.
Yeah.
So we would have been playing chicken and losing.
Yeah, we were bumping up against it. And then I think the other thing to consider is just once we saw the volume of books in the conversation to be, let me make that sentence make sense. Once we saw how long the book list was going to be after our conversation, I think it changed my expectation of that list a little bit. There are over 70, is it over 75 or 75 titles for me?
So the bookshop.org links are 75 titles.
Right.
And not every book that we discussed was able to be linked because some of them are out of print.
And just logistically putting that in the description in the show notes for an individual podcast, scrolling on that on your phone.
Scroll of book list, which I personally like, and not everyone will.
We have an option that you will still be able to do that, but it will also be more user-friendly for other people, which is that we're going to be an opt-in. Yeah, we will be putting those lengthy, like the unredacted full Cylia book list, like the full Cylia book list will be going up on our Patreon. And there are free tiers, and we have just recently added a $1 tier if you'd like to support the show. I can talk about that a little bit more later, but we've enabled it so that you can go to the Patreon. We're actually going to be making sure to give people access to those book lists, the Patreon subscribers, a little bit sooner than other people. So you'll get like a little reminder. It'll be like, hey, tomorrow there's an episode dropping from this author, and there is a huge book list that we're going to be putting up. And that's both telling you who the author is going to be and also giving you a preview of our conversation the night before the podcast will drop.
Yes. And we're trying to consistently link to our Patreon, our bookshop.org affiliate shop, in case you'd like to support the pod by buying links through that. You can also direct the purchase towards your local bookstore, because a stance of the pod is that we want you to support your local independent bookstore when possible.
And without like breaking the space-time continuum by revealing when we're recording this, I'm absolutely going to break the space-time continuum by revealing when we're recording this. Today is in fact Independent Bookstore Day, so I would encourage everybody to visit their local independent bookstore. And when we post these links and you go to bookshop.org, we can make sure that we are also supporting those independent bookstores instead of sending links to like the large. The ones like the big booksellers that everybody knows about.
We don't need to bring up their
give
names.
any.
Yeah.
We don't need to give any additional advertising to.
Yeah, the time travel of podcast recording is absolutely something I'm becoming hyper aware of as we record in varying ways.
Right. And some of that, just to like clue everybody in, this is sort of again like a meta show note. We are trying to coordinate to release episodes to fulfill multiple purposes. One is that if we are interviewing an author that has a book that's going to be released, we want to make sure that we are giving them a platform to talk about that book release with a certain proximity of that book release. So this is our conversation about Wendy N. Wagner. Wendy's book is going to be released in paperback. Girl in the Creek is going to be coming out in paperback. I think that's in May. And so we wanted to make sure that we released that book so it gives an extra opportunity for people when they hear us talking to Wendy to go like, oh, wait, there's this book. It's coming out in paperback. I can go pick it up. And we also have some interviews that are coming up at dates that we will not necessarily be mentioning right at the moment that we'll be having upcoming book releases. So we've prioritized inviting people onto the pod that will be talking about timely projects.
I think, well, number one, Wendy's paperback book release of Girl in the Creek is May 19th.
Okay, thank you for date checking me on that one. That one is not on my meticulously kept written notes.
Look, maybe we need to pause here and talk about your notes because you did show them and some of the prep and the amount by which I recoiled from the camera and your evil laugh right now. Just there are times when I recognize how differently our brains work, and that was one of them.
Yeah, I'm going to share this, and obviously if you're listening to us with just the ears, I think Sil will be able to like make a noise maybe that will give you like an auditory experience, but I am going to share some nonsense up on the screen, and this is just, I'm going to put this one up, and I'm going to tell you up front, I can't even read my own handwriting. So this is for me, and I see it, and I remember writing it, and then I remember what it is, but I'm not actually able to read my handwriting. Writing notes is not about being able to read the notes.
I haven't seen it yet, and this is hurting my brain. Eric?
All right, here we go. Ready?
Okay, for those who are listening, there is text at different slants that is perpendicular to the lines on a 3x5 note card. And when I say that it makes my skin itch, I usually try and leave room for all sorts of ways that you can organize. Different people have different ways. And this makes me twitch. Apparently, there's just reams of cards all over Eric's office that are sometimes horizontal and sometimes vertical and sometimes with the lines and sometimes not. And I look down at my multitudes of dot grid notebooks, of which I have a different one for different reasons. And I realize I might be the weird one, actually.
Well, I'm going to share another one because I can't explain it. And this one is, I am going to kind of share this, but I'm also going to read it.
What is happening?
So the first thing that it says at the top is it says minus 1100, 908.7, right, 700, my name Eric. At the top it says Cylia. There is a random squiggle here. I don't even know if that was a text or if I was just testing the pen. And then E43, and then at a different angle, 23.
A full-on different orientation.
Yeah, 23, maybe 12, colon 12, 23, maybe 33. So having now seen this and read them and not necessarily made sense of it, I can explain the logic, which is that those initial numbers are the settings that I use in our video editing software to orient the video, which is that I set Cylia at negative 1100. I set me at 700. And then there is a crop. So that 908.7 right is the crop that I apply to Cilia's screen. E43, no idea what that means. 2312, 2333. These are date stamps that I wrote down. They're completely unrelated from my day job. So, yeah, that's the chaos that I work with. It does work for me, and it is not, most of the stuff, if I actually do need to remember it, I type it up. But the act of writing on pieces of paper, I find sometimes makes things lodge in my memory better. So
I definitely find the memory encoding assistance from writing things down online is, on paper is very helpful. And because we're about to talk about it, I will pull up Wendy's notes. And, it's not super perfect, but it is linear and in alignment with the orientation of the page, and vaguely. And
for those of you just listening, and wanting like an audio description of that, I'm just going to go, That's it. That's my description. Like, oh, look at you with your ordered notes. Chaos works for me. I've had people ask me about my outlining process for writing a novel, and it always makes them scream and want to run out of a room. So we'll leave that for like a future conversation. But just know that
you do write horror, so that lines up.
Yeah, and that is that a good segue for us to talk about Wendy N. Wagner, Girl in the Creek, in our conversation? See, I am ready. Cylia gives me a hard time about my stacks of books, but I have a stack right here, and it's working out well for me.
Stacks of books are 100% legit, and long-term storage in stacks of books makes me want to give you a stern talking to.
Whatever works, folks. Whatever works.
So we talked about some of the changes to our show notes and the logistical challenges, which means we're pivoting how we get those book lists out to you. Is there anything else about the show or the time travel of podcast recording that you want to make sure we touch on before we move on to the episode?
Yeah, not really, but I will note that not really, and then I proceed to give a note, which is that we have kind of a movable schedule a little bit. So that's one of the reasons that we haven't announced our full lineup, but we have said that we're going to be doing 12 guests, and we have 12 guests engaged. We just don't necessarily have the times for them yet. Some of that is just logistics. So if it feels like we're avoiding naming the precise guests in the precise order, it's because we are. But there are a couple of other show concepts that I wanna bring up. One is that I mentioned the Patreon. The Patreon is going to be where you're going to be able to get a preview of our book lists before the episode goes up. We'll also be putting out reminder posts for the episodes, and we will be providing additional information on gosh, I don't like this word, but I'm going to use this word because I feel like it's the right word, content. We're going to be putting out additional content on the Patreon, and that may be, we don't know yet. And part of the reason that we don't know is because we want to make sure that we're leaving feedback from listeners who can join the Patreon, and they can leave comments or communicate with us through the Patreon. We also have comments enabled on our website for all of the individual posts, and you can also engage with us on our social media, which, just to remind everybody, and we do try to put this on our webpage, and again, that's just connecttheplots.com. We're active on Blue Sky, we're active on Instagram, and we're active on Threads. Those are the three places that we are currently active, and I think right now we are most active on Instagram. both Sil and I are on, I think, these platforms in separate personal capacities. So you might have the odd experience of interacting with the show account and then having like one of the individual people pop up or etc. And that's how social media works.
But
in 2026.
To speak to your content point, though, I think that is aligned with what you've brought up in Bears episodes and in some of the future recordings. Again, the Time Travel podcast recording is we want to solicit feedback in part because of your, and my wish, but I would say primarily your goal of creating community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't create community in a unidirectional fashion.
And I know as the show progresses, I want to lean more on that feedback, and I want to be more inspired by that feedback. It's hard to do that when we have a small number of followers on these social media platforms, and we have to record episodes in advance so that we have time to edit them and put them on up on the website. But you can chime in, and we can integrate them probably in the back half of our season. You'll see more. You'll see it being easier for us to respond to feedback and questions because we won't have recorded them in advance. And then we're also planning right now to have a second season, and that means that if you are listening to this and you're thinking like, gosh, I want to be on Connect the Plots as a guest, you can always tell us. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, gosh, I'd like this author to be on Connect the Plots as a guest, you can let us know that, and we can consider that as we build our guest list for season 2. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but I do think it's appropriate for us to talk a little bit about. I had a conversation with my wife about this just yesterday when we were talking about coordinating our household schedule, when I'm going to be recording what. And she was asking me about the guests that we had lined up and whether or not we were going to do certain people that are mutual friends of ours or not. And I said, well, we have a very particular kind of rubric for determining guests. And I think it would be appropriate for us to be a little transparent about that, because if we didn't select somebody or we didn't end up putting somebody in our first 12, it's not because we didn't love them. In fact, there are so many authors that I personally love and would do nothing. I would love to chat with them for forever, let alone an episode of a podcast. But there were 3 conditions that I think that we applied to the best for the guests for the first season. One is that I think we did want to prioritize authors that were going to have upcoming releases. So if we knew that somebody was going to have an upcoming release that was going to coincide with our season, we wrote those on like a short list. 2, we wanted to pick guests that had a connection in some fashion to Cylia and I, because it's not just about the names, it's also about the relationships. So most of the people that we're going to be talking to, I think all of the people that we're going to be talking to throughout the first season so far are people that I would consider friends and people that I would love to have dinner with or hang out with and have done in the past. So those personal relationships, I think, kind of helped, especially in our first season where we're just kind of getting our feet on the ground. And then it was just, availability. Like, it was just kind of availability. And I guess the secret fourth criteria was we wanted diversity across the board in terms of, like, not all authors, not all science fiction authors, not all fantasy authors, not all men, not all women. We wanted to
not
kind
all
of
established, not all debut.
Not all established. We wanted to kind of, we were very intentional about wanting to spotlight some debut authors, wanting to spotlight some authors that were farther ahead in their career, wanting to spotlight some authors that were, so we had a very,
and
we did 10, and non-authors. We have folks that are going to be coming on that are not authors that we're very excited because they have a very different perspective on story. And then for season 2, I think I've mentioned this already to Cylia, but I'd love to, I hope that we continue to broaden our pool. And some of my wish list items for season 2 would be to get people that might be coming at storytelling from like a comic book angle or coming at storytelling from like a film angle. So those are some of the people. Those are some of the types of guests that we've talked about in our short lists. I think we're going to continue to focus 70-80% of the time on books because that's our passion, and that's where we both land. But we also want to make room for bringing in people that have a different point of view.
Well, and fundamentally, we're going to run out of people we know at some point. Like, we can't only interview our friends, right?
Yeah.
So I think the other piece is it makes sense for our first season to be focused on those we know. And when we have no podcast presence of sorts, they're kind of doing a trust fall to be interviewed by us. And moving forward, I definitely have a wish list of people I'd love to talk to that don't know me at all. And it would be lovely to invite people and get to know new people or people we only know from reading their books.
Absolutely. So those were that Patreon, Eric talking about why we pick our authors list. That is very similar to the note card method of how my brain is organized. But I think that covers my thoughts on the show talk section of this plotting episode.
Great, then let's bring it back to Cylia's note structure, which is episode talk.
I am just holding up The Girl in the Creek to the camera because that's Wendy N. Wagner's book. So Wendy N. Wagner was the subject. Her paperback release May 19th. I have done my holding up the book, mentioning the date section of the episode talk.
Thinking back to our conversation with Wendy, was there anything that surprised you?
So, as I mentioned in the episode with Wendy, Wendy is a good friend of mine. So I don't think there was anything like fully out of left field that we talked about in terms of like Wendy. What is always interesting when we have these conversations is the different points of connection and the different I think that you and Wendy super bonded over some of those fairy tale stories, and that was great. That was great for me to listen to and kind of connect with. And I do think that it helps us to continue to our ongoing conversation about the definitions of horror. I think Wendy was a helpful ally for me in exploring what horror means and what horror might be good entry points for Cylia or other horror curious listeners. I'm also a couple of things that I'm surprised by is that I suspect, and I'm going to put you on the spot. How many Stephen King novels have you read, Cylia?
Oh, let's see. I've read The Dark Tower, and
Okay.
I really enjoyed
series,
that.
or just
the first one.
Okay.
I've read Misery, which is scarred into my brain. And it's why probably the primary book why I think I don't like horror. And we can get into that in a minute.
A little bit.
I think I tried reading one or two others. And look, and we may discuss this in a future episode, but some of my closest friends really love it. It's very formative for them. It's one of their...
the novel.
Novel. And I can't, there's certain content in there where I know that I can't read it, and I've been told by someone who cares about me and loves the book that I should not read it because of that content piece.
So the reason that I asked this question is because I'm a big horror fan, and I've only read 2 Stephen King books. Which
two are those?
So I've read The Stand, and I've read The Shining. And I read The Stand, I think, January 2021, right before the Stand miniseries. I think it was 2021, right before the new Stand miniseries aired on whatever streaming service that was at the time. And then I actually just read The Shining within the last 3 months. So I mentioned that simply because there are authors that we talked about. So Wendy in that conversation would bring up authors or stuff that would be appealing to you. And you're like, read that. And I think there is a strong possibility that if we were to go through your book read list, we would find that you have in fact read more horror novels than I have. It may be a smaller percentage of your overall book consumption, but there is a high likelihood that you have read, just by virtue of the fact that you've read so many books, more horror novels. So that was surprising to me, was how many horror novels Wendy would bring up, and you'd be like, well, yeah, of course I've read that, but I considered that literary. Yeah, of course I've read that, but that's just T. Kingfisher. Which is the other thing. Like, I've read a bunch of T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is a favorite author of mine. I still think you've read more.
I have read most of
yeah, there you go.
Kingfisher's work. It's true. I think the thing is, I did not consider them horror until you pointed out to me that they were horror. And in fact, we had the chance to talk with her at NorwestCon, and you did let her know that she's your secret weapon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting me to like and read horror.
So that was like that overall in that conversation. That was the big surprise that I took away was wow, Cylia's probably read more horror than I have. Which I want to ask another pointed, like, on the spot question, or make it like another small pivot. In a future episode, which we have recorded and I have done some editing work on, but is not coming.
Time travel of podcast recording.
Time travel. One of our guests directly asked you, like, how many books do you read a year? And it's in relation to me, both in our show conversation and in my interpersonal interactions with people, talking about how you read more than anybody else I know. And I wanted to zero in on that definition for our audience, and say, I'm going to ask Cylia to give her numbers in just a second, but it's not Cyl's read numbers per year that make me think that she has read more. It is the number of years she has been reading, and I think that it's the aggregate of number of books, not necessarily like the individual year pace, because I have known people who happily will read through 100 or 150 books. Some of those people, when you ask them about it, they're either speed reading or they're doing something else. My experience of talking to you about the books that you've read is that you're reading each and every one of them more or less the same way, like in the sense that you are fully consuming the book. You are not like, and I'm actually outing myself here because I tend to listen to audiobooks at a higher speed. You're not listening to them in like audiobook format at like 5 times speed or anything.
That just makes me twitch to think about it. No, in fact, knowing just a touch of the craft of audiobook narration, playing at more than 1.0 speed. And I know a ton of people who do, right? Like, and the only time I've been able to consume content at more than a 1.0 speed is like day job work related training, where the cadence of the speaker's voice or what they're describing does not impact my consumption because it's very utilitarian. When it comes to story, when it comes to narrative, when it comes to people even just sharing their conversations through an audio media platform like a podcast or the radio or anything else, I personally need it to be at the natural or cadence speed of like 1.0 in terms of like a podcast or a audiobook, how you can adjust the speed. I find myself skimming instead of engaging, and for me the purpose is the engagement, not necessarily just the output when it comes to stories.
And so that's why I would say that in my experience you are the most ravenous reader, because it's the consistency and the extent to which you are engaging with the work, I think, categorize you that way. This is one of those things where, like, as soon as you make any kind of ranking, I feel like somebody's going to come along and they're going to be like, "But I read 500 books and I read all of them perfectly." We don't need to.
This is not a flex.
Get into a competition.
I think that's the key here. Is like this. I knew that I was a quote unquote book nerd since a very young age, mostly from other children saying, "Hey, you're a book nerd. You're always reading." And I did not consider myself out of the norm until I started hanging out more consistently with other self-described book nerds, other authors, and then I would bring up the number of books I'd read because it would come up in conversation, or they would ask me and they would say, excuse me, what? And that's when I realized, oh, I may be on the far end of this parabola, right? Like I'm not necessarily in the median of the norm.
So what are your numbers, Sil?
I would say
What's 2025 look like?
On average, so 2025 specifically, I read, I thought I had read 100, but there were some duplicates because of the tracking app I was using. And so I think I only read 82. In general, there's been years I've read like 125. I would say if I was going to put an average on it, it's about 100 books a year, 95% of which are speculative fiction, so science fiction or fantasy, or as I'm learning, horror.
And for context, I read 47 books last year, which is not that bad, and I actually think is beyond the average. Like if you look at the number of books that the average American reads, it's a little sad. But what's your 2026 looking like?
I did sign up for the Goodreads challenge just as a way to keep track, and I like the little infographics they do at the end of the year. I'm a sucker for a collation of beautiful book covers, and I set myself a challenge of 100. I'm currently actually a little behind because I've been busy with some fun projects like a podcast.
Yeah, we are actually taking Sil away from the book show. What about you? Were there things from the conversation with Wendy that surprised you or seemed noteworthy for you?
I think at one point I'll not be able to say I'm surprised anymore that I am liking horror. But Wendy pointing out the different horror. It also was interesting to me that there was at least one book recommendation she gave that she explicitly said, this one's not for you, Cylia. This is that we're not gonna don't try and push yourself to like this one. We want you to like horror, not be scarred. Let's see, I'm looking at the list.
What? Yeah, which one was that? I'm looking at the list too. Which was the not for Cilia's book? Because if it's not on my to read list, I need to make sure it is.
I think it was specifically directed to you as one you would like. It was. I'm sure this is fascinating audio.
Was it Eat the Ones You Love, or was it
Incidents Around the House by Josh Mallerman?
Oh yeah, okay. I gotta listen to that. Yeah. So maybe some bonus content on our Patreon will just be me reading horror books that Sil doesn't want to read and giving you my feelings on it, because we've had ironically we've now had two primarily horror authors that we've interviewed. The second one will be coming up later, and both of them have given me book recommendations that they're like, and this is not for you, Cylia.
I appreciate their caretaking.
My horror book list is getting I've got two podcast related book lists. There's the assignments that Cylia gives me, and then there's all the horror books that are going to be side reading for me.
I do find that I can. It's almost like a Cliff Notes my spouse loves horror. And is less a reader and more a TV episode movie consumer, and he watched Welcome to Derry.
Okay.
And would watch these YouTube synopsis, here's what you missed, the little explain the references that were captured in the visual or the different pieces, just because we find that a really interesting part of stories too is in the different medium. How do they reference things or play homage or are in conversation with? And he did say, as we were watching one of those YouTubes, this is the only way that you should watch this, the episodes are too much for you. And what I find is he's one of the few people that do know what my triggers are pretty well. There's a couple others, close friends, and some that like they haven't quite dialed it in yet, and so like are constantly like throwing stuff at the Cylia wall and trying to see if it sticks. Like, wait, do you like this? Like, what is it that is off-putting? So, because for example, like gore doesn't bug me. Like, I watched Braveheart in the theater when it came out, and there's a certain point in one of the battle scenes where someone's hit in the head with a large war hammer and their brains explode on camera, and I laughed so hard I scared someone and they left the theater.
So this is like something about my personal development. So my mother, when I was growing up, was an RN. And specifically when I was really young, she worked in the emergency room, and then for a stretch of time she worked in the intensive care unit. And then later, when I was like a teenager, she worked in nursing homes. And she would bring home very grisly stories about things that she interacted with in her job as a medical professional. And sometimes she would come home and I would say like, "Hey, what's that stain?" And I learned very quickly to stop asking that question, because that was almost never a good answer. And to this day, I actually am a little squeamish around blood personally. Like, I don't love it. I don't really want to see like real life gore. And so like my wife and I will watch the TV show The Pit, which I think does a really good job of depicting real life gore, and I don't like it.
That's fascinating, because like
I see the storytelling necessity for it. I don't like turn away necessarily, but it is not like something that I'm like, yeah, I'm into that. On the other hand, I grew up watching horror movies, splattery horror movies, and in splattery horror movies, I would laugh and point at the screen and generally not have any difficulty at all having a good time with various decapitations or disembowelments.
So I am not a clinician of any stripe, but I have worked in healthcare for over 26 years now. And what I'm totally fine. Like, I will say I would endorse The Pit. Like, I think that is just a really, I do not yell at it as often as I do other healthcare shows. Aside from why aren't you wearing your PPE? And that's mostly so they can like film actors' faces.
People want their face on camera.
Yeah, PPE being personal protective equipment. It is important in a healthcare setting to not have fluids and airborne particles hit you as much as possible. That's a disease transmission risk. I'm just writing down The Pit. And so, yeah, and also, like, I've had the inside of my foot, the bottom surface of my foot stitched up once, and I leaned over to look as my spouse looked away, because I found, like, having to, like, clip the little globule out and, like, her showing me the different, like, layers of skin tissue really fascinating. And it's not a, like, ooh, I love it. I find it just fascinating and interesting, and it's not off-putting to me.
And this is a compare contrast between us, because that stuff tends to get to me, whereas horror I'm fine with. So I think that's I want to drill into the horror thing, but maybe is now the time, or do we want to? Okay, so let's talk about this, because I realized when I gave Cylia an assignment. In our first plotting episode, Billy and Girl by Deborah Levy. And I'll be honest, I still haven't double-checked that pronunciation, so I apologize. But I gave her that assignment, and it wasn't until after I gave that assignment that I reread the book, and I was like, oh, you know what? I should have given some content heads up. Like, I should have given some content warnings about this book. In general, I think it's a good idea to discuss content warnings when you're recommending a work, and be aware of what it is. I know that there are people who like maybe they have the strongest stomach in the world for horror, unless it's a subset of horror. Or maybe it's people that don't have any tolerance for horror, but there is a subset where it's okay. So I kind of wanted to ask you because it's the thing about horror as a genre is it's not a monolith. We talked about this with Wendy, and that some of the scariest horror stories that we could think of are not even shelved in the horror section. We brought up Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy is a horror story for a lot of people, but it's not in the horror section necessarily.
I was ambushed.
Right. So I'm curious, like where those individual, because I think that there are individual like content warning lines that are probably more important for me to communicate with you about and to work with our audience about than there are just broad genre strokes. So what are some of the things you talked about? Misery in particular. What about Misery can you articulate, and maybe you can't, but were there things in Misery that hit in such a way that you were like, don't like that, don't want to encounter that again?
Yeah, and it's before I had the wherewithal to say this book isn't for me and to walk away from it. So I like white knuckled my way through it. On reflection, and I don't know that I would have been able to articulate this at the time, because also I read it like in my young teens, and also I was probably a little young for it, although I was reading down in the adult science fiction and fantasy section of my library, back when I was like 11 and 12. So on reflection, what I would categorize it with, and I will add context, is the torture porn aspect of it all. So and spoiler warning for Misery, if you do not want to know key plot points of the book, based on my almost 30 years ago now recollection of it, more than 30 years, oh my goodness. The fact that it's explicitly about someone who takes agency away from someone and then uses that hierarchical power over them to harm them, and then acts as if it's for their own good. So
there's a little bit of that gaslighting element to it, like a little bit of that
psychological torture, the explicit abuse, and it's kind of critiqued in the text, but not in a way that overrides the fact that it's still there, right? So in the same way, like we watched a slasher film with time travel, and I found it delightful, even though it was clearly like a horror slasher film, in part because it's engaging with the tropes, but also not like in the, not just in the movie setting, but in the scripting of the characters, they're calling out what's messed up, right? Yeah. So I can handle I think even content warnings themselves can help me make an informed decision on whether I'm in a space where I can engage with something. So first of all, I'm in favor of content warnings, full stop. And some of the content warnings would make it so that I would choose to not pick up a story would be on-screen harm to children. Mm-hmm. On screen
or on page.
On page.
Yeah.
Yes. Explicit or direct on page sexual assault, particularly sexual assault of children. I have read books in which it is off screen in a way that I actually found to be helpful and empowering, because it acknowledged the reality of it without glorifying it. And
I think that are there more content warnings?
I I really think it's also, is it an awful thing happening to someone for no good reason just because there's awful things in the world? Like, I get that enough in my real life.
Cynicism?
Yeah, like
a certain cynical edge.
Yeah, like I need I use stories to cope with the world, and I need a kernel of hope. I need agency, and I think if unjust things happen, I think it is absolutely important to show that in stories, so people don't feel like everything's always sunshines and roses. And I need there to be a map to say, like, it doesn't have to be this way, it can be different.
What strikes me about content warnings, and I've come at this from different angles. I had the distinction, and of having my story in Nightmare Magazine the month that they introduced content warnings, and there are some pretty heavy content warnings for my story that's in Nightmare Magazine. It's a pretty dark story, and it actually kind of hits some of those content warnings that Cyl's talking about. And I was 100% in favor of content warnings running at the top of my story, and I think about that because sometimes people think of content warnings as. So when I was younger, when we were both younger, when we were all younger, in a younger time, there was an argument over what they called the V chip, which was a chip that they would put in TVs that would censor content based upon the ratings that they put in TV shows up at the top left-hand corner. I don't think this is a hot button issue, and it has been for some time, because at this point, like, what you're seeing on television, I think the barn door has been opened on that. Like, the content is just out there. You can find much more explicit content on social media than you can on cable or broadcast television. But for a while, because of the way that those content warnings were being applied to TV, and ratings, I should say, but because of the way ratings were being applied to TV, and then to a smaller degree music, the content warning, or the elements of it that might be upsetting to people, were viewed as in a very moralistic way. And so one of the things that you will learn about me as a person is that I'm not a big fan of a certain major retailer, commercial retailer, Walmart. I'll say them out loud. And one of the reasons that I'm not a big fan of Walmart is because in the early 1990s, there are a variety of things that they did, but they had a very specific policy about censorship, where they would censor works that they were carrying in the store. And they had, for example, Nirvana's album In Utero. And I am of a generation that was big into Nirvana. And they put out a very special Walmart edition of In Utero that censored one song just for Walmart customers. And in that regard, those content warnings that maybe people would have made the informed choice to not buy that album, that informed choice was taken away, and it was turned into a mechanism for censorship. So when I, as a reader or a writer, I'm talking about content warnings, I'm not talking about using them as a way to prevent people from getting access to content. I'm using them as a way to allow people to have informed consent, to opt into what they want to experience.
100%,
you know,
yeah.
And like, there's a website I'm familiar with, because this is like a content warning for me. It's like, I think it's like doesthedogdie.com.
Uh-huh.
And it's a website that just tells you if there's a movie or a media that has a dog in it, does that dog die? And I've written a lot of material that has dogs in it, and I won't do terrible things to animals in my stories. Like, that's not something I'm comfortable with. So, like, content warnings they're not saying,
they're
like,
not
let's take it off the shelf. No, and they can be. Like, they can give something away in the story.
But they're not inherently spoilers.
Right, yeah. In fact, so I think content warnings and understanding the angles of this is really important.
Yeah.
Like, this is a super important thing. It's also particularly important because, like, I want to share a certain love of horror with Cylia, but I don't want to do that at the expense of violating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be like, here's this Cormac McCarthy book, Celia. You're gonna love it.
And guys, it got me good. Listen to that episode with Wendy, because you'll hear my distress. I 100% agree. And in high school, I loved The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails. Like, I have no problems with explicit language and dark themes and contemplating nihilism and all of the... I think that there is a darkness in, if not all of us, many of us, that is very logical given the lives we've lived. And there's ways to engage with that constructively and productively. And I personally am not affirmed by on-screen or on-page sexual assault. That is right. Yeah, I don't need that.
I tend to agree with you. Yeah. At the same time, like, I recognize that there are people who might find that's a subject matter that if somebody wants to explore the meaningfulness of it to them, I understand that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's a movie that I think is amazing. It's one of my favorite movies from last year, and it does deal with sexual assault. And I found it to be incredibly powerful because I think it's from the creator's perspective, and the creator is doing it in such a way that I didn't find it to be exploitative. It's a movie called Sorry Baby, and it's an amazing movie. I don't know that I would recommend it to people who are uncomfortable with that material, but it's written and directed and stars somebody who is dealing with it in a very personal way. And I think that it's a stunning piece of cinema, and it was one of my favorite movies of last year. And one of the things that it does really, really, really well is it deals with the living with and the personal reality of living with in the aftermath of something like that. And I want to make sure that people have the ability to communicate that deep, powerful part of their story, and that we also as audience members have the ability to understand what we are going to consume. And some of that is just good audience communication, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't necessarily, when you see Wendy's book, it gives you an idea of what you're in for. Mm-hmm. If instead of the girl having mushrooms all over her, it was like a children's party with a clown and a pony, and there was like a creek flowing by and there was a girl playing in the creek, you might pick up that book and you might go like, wait a second, that's not what this is about. So it's also just good signaling to your audience so that your audience knows what they're getting into and that they opt into it in an appropriate time. There are times and places where you're going to want to read about a mushroom-infested girl in the creek, and then there are times and places where you're not going to want to do that, and you're going to want something different, and you're going to want to be able to choose those options. So that's why I'm a firm believer in content warnings and in also having more in-depth conversations with people. I think this is one of the seeds of this podcast was somebody says, I liked this, I didn't like this, or I like this, I didn't like this, what should I read next? And your follow-up questions and your care and understanding and kind of diving through that process, I think, was really inspiring and kind of started was the genesis of this project was that, as I've referred to it affectionately, the algorithm. Like if you liked this, you might like this. If this aspect of it is that. I was in an anthology once that was really fun, where they had a quiz and it would ask you like different things that, like different properties that you liked, and based upon your answers it would recommend stories in the anthology. And that was great because it was a fun way of getting people to what they wanted at the time. So you could maybe use content warnings in a similar way. Like, I don't want this is okay with me, and then it filters you to maybe what you want to read rather than being a mechanism that says this is good, this is bad. It's more about a reader opt-in funnel.
The thing that I find helpful when I'm trying to recommend books for someone is not just what they like, but also if they read something and then didn't like it, tell me what you didn't like, because that also helps refine the algorithm.
And I'm going to push, like here, I feel like I'm on a soapbox more than usual, but get used to it, folks. When I say I don't like something, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Correct. Yes.
This is something that I hate that we have to say this out loud, but like saying that this didn't work for me, or I didn't like this for this reason, that is not a judgment call on any of the works. That's just my reaction was this, and I just want to be really clear about that, because we are endeavoring to do a show here that's mostly about positive things that we like and we love, and I just want to be clear that, like, if we're not bringing something up, it's not because it's bad. It's either because we haven't thought of it, we haven't read it, or it maybe didn't strike us in a particular way that was organic to what we were into at the moment. Like, we all go through phases of what we want to be interested in. You may go through a phase where you really want to read about mushrooms, and if you're really into and this is a fad now, right? I've got some other stuff I'm going to talk about mushrooms, but like what they're calling sporer. Like, maybe you're going through like maybe you want to read the sporer books. And if that's the case, you're going to really like sporer books. You may be less interested when you're reading sporer books with reading Jane Austen. But maybe later, when you're not in the sporer age, maybe you want to read Jane Austen, or you want to read like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies or something. So it's just a very different. It's just a. I hate that we have to be explicit about it, but I have been on the internet, and I have seen how people have behaved.
I mean, I guess I have less concern about being explicit with it, because there are folks who've not thought about it this way, even though it may be a conversation that you and I have had a lot in different venues as well as with each other. I think that it is good to be self-aware in why you like something or not, and be able to separate your appeal or your fondness for something from some sort of theoretical objective value judgment of good or bad. I think that many things can be for many people. I also think that there's some stuff that emphasizes things that I think are not good in the world that I personally don't think we should emphasize. But that doesn't mean that there's not a time and a place for a lot of things. Writing's hard. Putting in that much time and heart and soul into something, most people are doing the best they can and trying to put something important out into the world. I just was checking, like, there is a book with content warnings at the beginning that I recall that was did have on page attempted sexual assault, and it was done in such a skillful way that emphasized this was not good, and it actually engaged with the impact on the individual in such a fantastic way that I would absolutely recommend it to anyone. And that is Foz Meadows' A Strange and Stubborn Endurance. And it acknowledges the realities of harmful relationships and those kinds of assaults in such an affirmational way that it did not twig me out at all. So none of this is a hard and fast rule, right?
Yeah, none of these, they're not hard and fast rules, and they're not even hard and fast like all the time. Like, there are going to be different times. Every year I'm a big movie person. I definitely watch more movies a year than I read books. I think I counted, and I probably watch at least 350 movies a year. I'm watching. See, like,
that's where those stories, you have an edge on me.
Yeah, so I watch a lot of movies. I wanted to be a screenwriter at the earlier part of my creative career, and still have screenwriting aspirations in the background, as much as I'm passionate about writing books. But every year there's the Academy Award movies, and Academy Award nominated movies. There are exceptions to this, but many of those movies can require emotional investment. Like, they require an emotional investment, and they require, like, I loved the movie, the last movie, one of the movies from last year. I really, really loved it, and I recommend it. And my brain is Hamnet. Hamnet is I think so Hamnet was a wonderful, I love that movie. I love that movie a lot. It was, boy, like, it's a movie about grief, and you're going to sit there and you're going to be sad for like a good solid 2 hours. It's a solid and beautiful 2 hours, but you're just going to be sad. And at the end of it, you are going to feel some deep, like, resolution or some catharsis. It's a wonderful movie. Like, I love this movie. I recommend this movie. Go into this movie knowing that it is going to take at least 4 hours of your life. Like, the time that you spend watching it and the time that you spend
processing,
recovering from it. And you're not always in the space where you want to invest 4 hours in that sort of thing. And that's why I say that, like, content warnings and signaling your reader can also just be like a Tuesday night, I'm not in for 4 hours of sad. Sunday night, maybe I am because I'm starting earlier, or Saturday night is maybe my sad night because I don't have to get up early on Sunday morning. Like, wherever it falls in your personal cadence, like, and that's why I think it's valuable, and that's why when we're talking about material, we're going to talk about content warnings. And when I give books to Cylia, sometimes I'm gonna ask up front about things, and I'm gonna explore it because I'm still learning what those boundaries are and what's going to appeal to you.
And sometimes I might accept the recommendation and put a little tag on it so that I can revisit it when I am in a space where I can engage with it and be okay, right? Like, that I have the internal resources to be able to process whatever that challenging thing is. Because my other piece is being able to go into it mindfully allows myself to explore that growth edge rather than just stay in comfort. Sometimes I want comfort reading, and sometimes I want to push myself. Back to Wendy Wagner and our interview with her, Wendy has the distinction of, I did know going in, reading her novel, An Oath of Dogs, that... Oh, look at you putting the book up on the screen.
From my stack of books. I have An Oath of Dogs handy.
I knew, because I had met her by that point, and I knew going in it was going to be horror. I could be prepared for the scary elements in a way that wasn't a surprise. Like, I didn't go in thinking it was just going to be, there's a space colony adventure, and then be ambushed by the horror elements of it all. I knew going in so I could appreciate it and take breaks as I needed to, and then appreciate those sweet, good boys. That's the dogs, guys.
So do we want to talk about what we're currently reading and what we're talking about next? Do we want to make that segue now?
I actually want to give you your assignment next before we go into what we're currently reading.
I have a note card ready for this. Look at this, and look at my pen, Cylia. Look at this. This is my uncapped Crown Plaza.
I'm gonna make myself blotchy from the itchiness that's resulting in scratching my skin.
Let me just draw a little bit to make sure that the pen still has ink. We're good.
Yeah, it's totally great. I love this. I'm definitely not writing up a list of books, notebooks, and or writing implements to give you to try and steer your future note taking. It's totally normal. I am very normal.
Okay.
My assignment. And so far, what I'm trying to do, just for the audience's sake, is in our conversations, choose a book from it that means a lot to me, that I also think was released in what Erik self-describes as the gap period of when he was not reading science fiction and fantasy. So that curated list. And in terms of the recommendation or the book discussion with Wendy N. Wagner is So You Want to Be a Wizard.
I guessed that was going to be it, and I was looking
by
at that
Diane
book,
Duane. And I'm going to pull an Erik right now.
Ooh, yeah, she is holding up the book, folks. Is there an accepted cover for this, or
So
any
no,
cover?
actually, there are very few books in which I have super strong feelings about the cover. You just encountered my very strong feelings early on. Interestingly, with the So You Want to Be a Wizard, which is with the first book in the Young Wizards series, is she has the original books. I believe So You Want to Be a Wizard originally came out in 1981. Nope, 1983. And
Okay.
she has re-released the books in the millennial editions, in which she has gone back and actually written them with such modern things that were not around in the 80s, like cell phones.
I assume you've read both editions?
I've absolutely read both editions, and I've read the entire series.
Do you have a strong feeling of which one I should read?
I would say, because we are of though I am older than you, we are of a similar generation. I actually recommend the original.
Yeah, I was
81
inclined to go the
release
original.
first,
Yeah.
although I think they're both good, and if you only can find one or the other, for those listeners out there, I would recommend either one. I think they're both very skillful. I think it is a really interesting situation to go back and rewrite it with modern without changing the main story beats. So I like some stories are written in the past and then it would have been solved with a cell phone.
Right.
And that's not the case with this.
That's interesting.
I also think,
from like a creative perspective, I think it might be fascinating to see how you can modernize a text with and without change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it is, given so many of the serious, dark, and frankly depressing things that are out in the world right now, particularly in our country, I find the message underneath the Young Wizards series of a commitment to strive and invest and in some cases fight for life and against entropy to be incredibly valuable right now. And I read this while young and then kind of forgot about it and then rediscovered it in my early 20s, and it was like being welcomed home. And it's like, oh yeah, someone shares my values, and this is the hope that I need. And every so often I do, as we've discussed, you do not do rereads, and I absolutely do. And this is one of the series that intermittently I need to wrap myself in hope again. And this is one of the series that give that to me.
So I want to drill on that not rereading thing, because as much as I've said that, I actually contradicted myself since the last time we recorded one of these plotting episodes, which is that right after I gave you the assignment to read Billy and Girl, I read the entire thing.
Oh, but that's cute.
I wanted to reread it so that I was fresh on it as you were to reread it. So yeah, I did reread it, and I. So here's the thing. Like, sometimes I say I don't reread because, there are good reasons. Like I do have strong sense memory attached to the reading experience, but then there's another reason why I don't tend to reread books. I don't have time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to catch up on all the books I haven't already read once. And so, while I respect, and I loved rereading Billy and Girl, because I still love that book. And please, folks, just at least acknowledge to me that you've heard me recommend this somewhere on social media or on our webpage, because again, I've never met a single person that's read it but me. Someday I'm going to find somebody and they're going to have read it, and we're going to be like the only two people in this corner of the world, but except for the author, who I would absolutely cry if I met her because of not just Billy and Girl. I've read some of her other work and I think it's brilliant. But I did reread it for this particular podcast as an experiment. So I think that's valid.
Well, and I can lend this to you, and because cool. You need to give me books.
I do. I still have your Harper Hall books, and I still have Billy and Girl to loan you. So we definitely need to make that happen. So do I give you an assignment now? Do we want to continue to talk about the...
Yeah, if you have one to give me, I'll take it.
So, and the reason that I wanted to talk a little bit about the boundaries is that I am actually gonna. This is even doubling up on your list. I am gonna strongly suggest, or put in my choice to suggest, that you read a book that I have already held up to the camera, Girl in the Creek. And the reason that I think it's a great book to read is it's a horror book for sure, but Wendy writes with care and humanity, and I think that this book is a good horror book for people who found T. Kingfisher appealing, and are willing to take it up about 10 or 15% on the horror level. Though I've heard some of T. Kingfisher's books are a little bit more horrific than others, so I don't know. But this particular book, I would say, is like it's like a T. Kingfisher book a little bit more. There are definitely some. So the content warnings that I would mention is that there is a conversation. It's in the background of the book. It's a big part of the book about people that have gone missing in a region of Oregon. So there is a subplot about missing women that plays into the plot line. I think it's handled well. I think it's handled with care, and I think in terms of the horror content, it's not. I would say this is a good tester. Like if you read this and you go like, Eric, that was too far, I'm going to calibrate back down. If you read it and you feel like it's okay, then I'll have a level set. So does that feel comfortable for you? Is that something that you're willing to take on?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's what I would suggest. And that being said, there are two other horror books for the rest of you weirdos out there that I wanted to. These are the horror books that I want to mention for they're not at your level yet. So
I gotta do some reps.
Well, and they may never be, right? They may never be what you want. The first is one that I just read, and so this is the book that I just most recently finished, and it's called Sour Cherry by Natalia Teodoridou. I'm always gonna worry that I'm mispronouncing that name. This is a Nebula Award finalist. The author has also been nominated before for shorter fiction, and this is put out by a publisher here in Portland. This is a Tin House book from Portland, Oregon. This is a great book. It's maybe something that you would find interesting in that it is engaging with fairy tales, but it gets pretty dark. So this is a framing very much about. So it's kind of a Bluebeard retelling. A little bit of a Bluebeard retelling.
Is it Slavic or Ukrainian? Sour Cherry makes me think of...
Sort of.
Okay.
There are nested narratives
Okay.
in this story, which is to say that at some points the narrator is narrating a story that you would expect to hear, and that includes the expectation of a certain Slavicness. Mm-hmm. But there is another layer of the story where there is other stuff happening. So this is a book that I think is operating on multiple levels, and that it's being narrated by a character that you don't learn about that character's backstory until well into the book. This character is talking to another character, and there are shifting definitions as the book goes on as to who these characters are. And there's also a chorus of ghosts that the main character is interacting with, and what those ghosts are and who they are. What it's doing that I find creatively and like as a writer and as a reader so fascinating is that it's talking about the way that we create stories around tragedy. It's talking about how in some cases it's easier to ascribe a complicated fairy tale backstory to much more conventional, mundane evil. And there's a lot of angles. This is actually a book that I could see myself rereading multiple times to kind of pick it apart. This is a book that, in a way, like it's rare that I read a book that I kind of wish that I had like a 6 or 7 person book club to discuss with. But this is a really dense, fascinating, interesting book that is exploring the nature of stories and again, tragedy and the myths around tragedy and the expectations. There are these great moments in the narrative where the narrator says, like on page, like as a first person narrator, oh, actually, that might be an anachronism. Calling attention to the fact that the narrator is creating an unreliable narrative that is creating a layer of fairy tale. And it brings chills to me thinking about that. It's a great book. I strongly recommend it. It does get grisly, and it does deal with, I mean, Bluebeard, for those of you that don't know, is basically a man. I've heard honestly, I've heard so many variations of it, so that I don't know. Maybe
I think of him as a serial killer.
Yeah, he's basically a serial killer
wives.
that's of killing his wives and
spoiler for the fairy tale Bluebeard.
It's been around for a long time.
Many decades, centuries.
Yeah. And the cover of this book features a head hanging by hair, which I think is also a connection to my understanding of Bluebeard is that often the heads of the wives are kept. In some versions of the story, the heads are still talking. In some versions, it's a ghost. Some versions, there's hair. Whatever it is, it's dealing with basically kind of a serial killer of wives. So it's dark, but it's great.
The nested stories aspect of it makes me think of Catherine M. Valenti's The Orphan Tales duology, of which the first one is called In the Night Garden. It also skillfully deals with unreliable narrators, nested narratives, and fairy tales, though it's not a retelling of any kind. It's as far as I can tell, it's invented whole cloth. I'm not adding it to your list yet.
Well, you don't have to, because I generally speaking, like, I have like an ongoing list, which is I will read anything by Catherine. It's just a question of like when and where I get the
how you can
books
fit
from.
it in.
Yeah, like when I can fit it in. There are a handful of authors that if I have an opportunity to read them, I will absolutely put them on my stack. Catherine M. Valenti is one of them.
Purposefully not going into more than that because of future plotting.
Future plotting.
Great.
Fair enough. The other horror book, and this is actually one that I have not started reading yet, but I wanted to mention it because Cylia and I went to the book release party for this. This is Wife-Shaped Bodies by a friend, Laura Cranehill. And I'm so excited to read this. This is another book that I think is riffing on that like spore horror content. I've read just enough and heard just enough in readings to enjoy it. And I'm going to share, because this is not a spoiler, but it is also like one of the reasons that I think this book is going to be so brilliant to read. And there's an Easter egg in here. This is a signed page from the copy that I got from Laura. This is her dedication. I think maybe my mic was being muffled by the book, but her dedication is, "This is for my enemies." And if a book that has a dedication for "This is for my enemies" doesn't make you want to read it, I don't know. Like, that in and of itself, like, I was already on board this book, obviously. I think Laura's a genius. Laura is candidly one of those authors that I met, and I was like, okay. And then I heard Laura read, and I was like, I need to step up my game. Like, I need to be working harder. Like, I need to hustle, and do good work, because Laura is delivering. And I've seen, I'm not the only person that's touting Laura Cranehill, right? Like, I've been watching as a friend of Laura's to see the response from authors and readers on social media. And Laura, I think for her own sanity, as all of us authors can only handle very minimal, if any, exposure to reviews. But I'm seeing people being very excited about this book, so I'm going to be reading it. This is one of my next up books.
My spouse has a soft spot for mushrooms, particularly creepy, beautiful mushroom ladies, and so I think I need to. I've already bought it, so where it falls in the reading lineup may depend on where I'm at with internal resources, and it's absolutely in the to be read pile. It's just its ranking may vary.
I know Laura well enough to know that it's probably going to be fucked up.
I mean, honestly, you introduced me to her, And her book release was an event at Palace City of Books in conversation with Wendy N. Wagner, appropriately.
It all connects, the red strings.
And the two incredibly sweet people that I just want to hang out with all the time, and so many fucked up things are coming out of their brains. It just, that juxtaposition delights me to no end.
Yeah.
All right, so we've given each other book assignments. What have you finished recently, and what are you currently reading?
I think in our last plotting episode, I mentioned that I had just started The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. I finished that. Loved it. That book I saw after I finished it was nominated for a Hugo Award. Nice. So I feel validated. Like, it's always nice when you read a book and you go like, this is brilliant. And then a bunch of people are like, yeah, it sure is. So that one I finished, I think you would love that one. So I think that's another one that I think does a really interesting thing with, the nature of story and history. And that like, it almost kind of has a, Groundhog's Day style thing where there's repeating versions of the myth. But it's way better than I just made it sound. So I finished that. I also think I mentioned that my next up was Catabasis. I finished that. I really enjoyed Catabasis. I thought it was really good. I've liked everything that I've read by R.F. Kuang prior, and this didn't disappoint me at all. In fact, I thought that it was. What surprised me about it was how funny it is, but in like a real dark way. I having studied Dante's Inferno and some of the other stories that it's in conversation with about in underworld journeys. There's an aspect that I think some readers forget about Dante, which is how petty he was. When he was writing the Inferno, which you could talk about like when you're taking like a lit class that focuses on Dante, or you read stuff about it, where it's like, and then in this circle of hell, all the people that did me wrong, and then in this circle of hell, those other people that did me wrong. Like, it's super petty, and
let's motivate you to create great works of literature.
Like, I remember doing like an assignment, I think back in my college days, where it was like, make up your own rings of hell, like for people that you would spitefully put there. And I remember being like, this is a ring of hell for the people that don't put their shopping cart back in the parking lot of supermarkets. Another like super petty,
very
like,
specific.
Very specific. She does that, but she does that in the context of academia in particular. And I found that really funny. Like, for me, I just laughed. I just was like, I thought it was hilarious because while I haven't done as much graduate education as R.F. Kuang, who is a certified genius, I think, I have done enough and have interacted with enough that I can definitely get the jokes. And there's just all of the versions of hell and Catabasis are oriented around different kind of forms of academics and the irritation that one might have dealing with academics in different aspects of academia. The personal hell for somebody who is like a graduate fellow. I thought it was hilarious. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be a full-on dark comedy in that way. And then I am now reading John Chu's. We've talked about this. I think this was an Elizabeth Bear recommendation from our first episode. So I'm now reading, making my way through The Subtle Art of Holding Space. That's my current reading project.
I feel like we are just doing tradesies, because what I just finished is The Subtle Art of Holding Space. Some of the I thought the narrative world structure and premise was fascinating, from like a physics with also a lot of like hand wavy, not really explaining the mechanics of it, which I really enjoyed the premise in the first place. And the family dynamics and the interplay of expectation versus self-preservation was present and remarked on by characters in the text in a way that I thought was really good, because I think it would have actually been distressing to me had they not remarked on it. So it was fantastic. I really recommend. I'm looking forward to talking to you about it after you finish reading it.
Presumably we'll be ready to talk about it next time.
Perfect.
In our plotting episodes.
And then what I'm in the midst of reading are 2 books, Catabasis.
Nice.
And The Dragon Has Some Complaints by John Wiswell.
Yeah, so I've started that as well. This is an opportunity for us to say, we love reading your arcs. Like, we want to read your books. So John Wiswell's The Dragon Has Some Complaints is due out in I think July. But as media figures, we have been approved to read arcs, and we love them. And you should enable it for us. We're going to review your books. We're going to talk about them in the pod. We may interview these folks, but yeah, definitely. Like early on, I think Cylia and I were talking about doing this project, and I said, I want e-arcs. That's what I want. That's one of the things I want out of it. One of our next guests, we've had an opportunity to read an advanced copy, and I'm going to mention that because there's some book releases coming up I want people to be thinking about.
Great. Next up in my to be read pile is Billy and Girl, which I need to get the copy of from you.
I can make that happen.
And in terms of next up, I think you're going to talk about upcoming releases. I am building my reading list in part around the Hugo Award book nominees. The Hugo Award nominees is how I'm generating my next book list to read. Actually, I do this every year, usually in rainbow colors, because I will be attending Worldcon this year. And if you attend, you're a voting member, so you get to vote on which stories, editors, and other Hugo and not a Hugo awards that are eligible. And I'll just put in a plug that you don't have to attend to be a supporting member and get a voter's packet of these books. So please consider checking out Worldcon and signing up to be a member so that you can get some stories and ingest them and vote for what you think are incredible works that need to be recognized.
I do think for people that might be tuning into our podcast because they were like, what's this? What's science fiction and fantasy? I do think that the Hugo lists is maybe is always a good place to find like the freshest science fiction and fantasy that the genre has to offer. So I think it's it's a good entry point if you're wanting to read more sci-fi and fantasy books. The Hugo Award list, the Locus Award list,
the Nebula
nominations. Those are great places to look at books. I have read. I've got The Incandescent is my next up after I finish The Subtle Art of Folding Space by Emily Tesh, and that's a Hugo Award nominated book. I've read some of the other Hugo Award nominated books, and I'm looking forward to reading more of them. I'm also going to be at Worldcon, which means Connect the Plots is going to be at Worldcon. So we will be there as a duo and as a team. There is a very high likelihood that we will in fact be spotted together frequently throughout Worldcon. Yeah, so now like the summer is a great time to be a science fiction and fantasy fan. Is this a good segue for me to talk about this? Mm-hmm. Okay. And one of them is that this is every year, May and June tend to have like a lot of book releases. May in particular has some real blockbuster books coming out that I wanted to mention. One coming up on the 5th of May is Fonda Lee's new book, The Last Contract of Isiko. I'm really looking forward to that. We may be talking about that more in the future. I'm really looking forward to another. This one I'll just straight up spoil because I want to make sure that enough people are talking about this book as possible. Mary Berman has her debut novel, which is called Until Death. Cylia and I have both read it. It's phenomenal. We've talked to Mary. Mary is going to be in an upcoming episode. It's a fantastic book. I want everybody to read it. She's going to be doing all sorts of events on the East Coast. I'm hopefully going to catch up with Mary at StokerCon. In that like time travel aspect of these episode recordings, you will hear towards the tail end of the episode with Mary me being like, I kind of want to go to the Stokers. I don't know if I'm going to go to the Stokers. Spoiler, I'm going to the Stokers. So I'm going to be in Pittsburgh for StokerCon at the beginning of June. And I am a giant horror reader and would love to find out more horror books that Cylia will not read and or will read. But I definitely want to make sure Until Death is on your reading list or your to purchase list. Other personal
I believe
favorites
just to preface it, my recollection of the tagline is "Say yes to the dress meets Rosemary's Baby."
Yes, so I think that's not Mary's tagline, but I think somebody gave that as a tagline that they put on the book. But it is fantastic. It is fantastic. Another one of my personal favorites, favorite authors. I'll read anything he writes. This is an example of somebody that I want to have on the pod. It's just a matter of timing, and maybe it will work out. Ray Naylor has a new book that's due out on the 19th. And I want to make sure I get the wording of the name. Palaces of the Crow is the name of the book. That's coming out on the 19th of May. And then, there's a Martha Wells book. The new Murderbot book is coming out in May. I believe that's the 5th of May. And there's a new Ann Leckie book. I mean, come on, like Ann Leckie is living science fiction royalty, and this is a new book in the series, the Imperial. Am I going to pronounce this correctly? Radch, Radch series. That's coming out. I think that's the 15th of May, or the 12th of May. Double check these dates, folks. But there are just so many great books coming out in May, and that's just scratching the surface. Syl and I were talking about this in advance, and this is another plug I want to put in. Locust Magazine is an industry magazine that I have a subscription to. I get every issue in the mail. I also go online all the time. Locust Magazine has a great upcoming book releases. They also will spotlight books, like they spotlighted John Chu's book and several of these other books that we've talked about. Locust is a great resource. It's also a nonprofit organization, so like sponsor support Locust, I think is a good thing that you can do for the community, and at the same time you get to see like put all the book lists up for the various awards. They will tell you about events. I have been in Locust Magazine on several occasions in photos from events. My book announcement was in Locust, and when my book announcement showed up in Locust, even though it had been in Publishers Marketplace and it had been official, seeing it in Locust was like a special moment, because like those are my people, and I was in the magazine. So extra special loud shout out for Locust Magazine. I'm just the shill this episode, I guess.
I love it.
Anything else we want to talk about coming up? Other than, we've mentioned we're going to be at some of these convention appearances in the summer.
Yeah. So we talked about our show and logistics. We talked about the episode, and we talked about what we're reading now and what's up next. So we hit all of my tiki boxes today.
Awesome. Okay. I think we can call this an episode that we did successfully. We'll see you next time, folks.
See you next time, Eric. Bye.
You've been listening to Connect the Plots with Cylia Erik. Thanks. Please connect with us on social media. We're Connect the Plots Pod on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. You can also support us and gain access to exclusive content on our Patreon. That's at patreon.com/Connect the Plots Pod, all spelled out. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.